Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range. Hey, it's Shan here. This week I speak with Ricky Roberts III. It's such a regal name, that one, Ricky Roberts III. Ricky's a writer. He's written 8 books, specifically one that really spoke to me, and that was the Thank You Skateboarding book, which has been a really big hit of a book, especially in the skateboarding community. Ricky is friends with professional skateboarder Chris Markovich, and he was responsible for organising the episode I did with Chris, so thanks, Ricky. Ricky's a past guest, and when he was on the show last, he talks about his early life experiences, which was a near-death experience where he was stabbed 7 times in a street fight and, almost lost his life. And since then, he's changed his life dramatically, and he's become a motivational speaker, and he talks about that and, what led him to that moment in his life and what he did to turn his life around since then and how he survived. It's a great story. Yeah, this week, Ricky and I talk about skateboarding. Ricky's an avid skateboarder. We're the same age. We kind of look similar. Like, I was looking at him going, dude, we're similar, like sort of like the same complexion. He's bald, he's got a beard, so same age, exact same age. So I don't know, man, just feel connected to the guy. We have a really, we just have a good conversation. Like, we record remotely. I try to avoid the remote recordings these days because I just think there's nothing as good as being in person, but sometimes the remote recordings give me access to legends like Ricky, and it's a good recording. It's easy to hear. Ricky's in Florida, specifically St. Petersburgh. So, we connect, via the time differences. We go into his, we talk about his struggles with poor mental health during his life, and most recently a really dark period he went through during the pandemic lockdowns. The last half hour of this conversation gets really intense. I'm just going to put it out there. There's a bit of a trigger warning. We do discuss suicide and suicidal ideation. So it's a trigger warning. So the last half an hour, we go into discussion around that. It's done in context, and it's done in a way that is potentially helpful. But if you are struggling with that right now, there is online help. There's also phone numbers you can call for assistance. In Australia, we have a service called Lifeline, so maybe you can look for something similar to that in your country. Worst case scenario, you know what, I say this a lot actually, like send me a DM or an email, and I'll personally support you in finding help in whatever country you're in. So you're not alone. And as always, doing it for the kids, and we talk about that, why we do things, Ricky and I, what our purpose is. It's a great conversation, so thanks, Ricky, and enjoy. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks.
Yeah, good to meet you, man. Whoa. Dude, I'm
Submissive dominant lifestyle.
3, 2, 1. Alright, do this. Yeah, so...
Good, so dude, that's awesome you're training MMA. I love it.
Thanks, man. I've been boxing for years, and MMA is only new in the last year or so, and it just so happens that the gym in my area is like the best fighting gym in the world. It's I don't know if you follow UFC, but pound for pound champion of the whole organisation, Alexander Volkanovski, trains there. I don't know if you heard of him. So I've just, been around just this champion energy, not just from him, but there's other fighters there here in the UFC and Australian title holders, and it's just so good to be around those kind of elite athletes. It's really inspiring,
That camp is like, it's crazy. I just saw my boxing trainer like 3 days ago, my old boxing trainer at the gym. and not the boxing gym, just gym to go sit in the sauna and stuff. And there was a time when I was training. You talk about the professionals. A person named Winky Wright and Jeff Lacey were there, and several other really good fighters. But those two were like up there, like champions, essentially, basically. And being in the gym training when their camps were in there training was incredible. Just the energy, like you said, and the determination, and seeing firsthand what professional fighters do to train for a fight. Like, you see it. It's crazy the amount of work that would go into before they even sparred. How much like bag work, jump rope, just everything went on rounds, like constant round, turning over rounds to new exercises. It was super inspiring, like you said.
Yeah, and that's what I'm discovering. These are people who are living the best version of themselves, because it's not just the training, it's the diet. And
Yes.
also with MMA, there's a lot of emotional intelligence required as well, because, of the fear that's associated with it. There's a high level of pressure from the people around them, and these guys have got sponsor obligations and media obligations. And so because it's so demanding on them emotionally as well, a lot of them are turning to meditation and spiritual type of practices to stay focused, and they're just being great people to be around. They're not
That's
the thugs, not the thugs that I kind of always thought they were at all.
No, I was listening to the last episode you did, and who I don't remember her name, but it was a female fighter, and she was talking about how like she's super passive, nonchalant, and you were asked like, what? So it's just crazy what happens when you get in the ring. And I experienced that in boxing with the fact that people are so nice in the gym. Everyone was loving, friendly, so supportive. And it's not like you're going in there with this rage to hurt someone else. Because if you are, you're going to lose. You're going to lose your composure. You're going in a dance with someone else. It's this weird level of respect that it's just a phenomenon, really, to respect someone so much and care for someone so much when they're hitting you or trying to hit you. But like I said, it's a dance. And I could see with MMA, it's a whole nother level, because you're not just watching for hands, you're watching for everything and anything. And that's just, that's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, there's like layers and layers to it. And I've had a lot of people say to me, because I've had a series of UFC, not just UFC fighters, but professional fighters on the podcast in the last few weeks, and people were like, are you an MMA podcast now? I'm like, not at all. I'm like, I just feel like I'm hanging out with skateboarders, because they're just constantly problem solving and learning new tricks and trying over and over to land that trick,
Yeah.
And there's no, like in those gyms, I don't see any anger, or I don't even see a lot of aggression. If there's any aggression, It's like this internal aggression, and people just supporting each other. And like when you spar with someone, it's like at the end you just want to hug that person so much, because that they've just gone through what you've gone through, and they're struggling like you are, and it just bonds you together so much. As you're trying to punch them in the face, or as you're trying to choke them out, it's bizarre. So, yeah, man.
I like that personally. I like that you've been doing it, because it's just, you're peeling back the layers to other human beings they just happen to be UFC fighters, right? I mean, but they have so much more to offer beyond the art of fighting that they show the audiences and that people see, with the mindset that goes in behind positioning themselves to the point of even being there. Like the person before, the partner of the one of the female guests you had on last time, like the I forget his name, but he's like living in a van and stuff like that, the dedication to pursuing his dream. So like whatever the face of the dream is doesn't matter as much as talking about the pursuit and the dedication to it. That's the beautiful part. In my mind, that's what I take from it, you know.
The pursuit, man. I think life's all about the pursuit, you know. And I think too, like going back to what you're saying, for me, it was just getting out of my comfort zone and just learning some new stuff. I mean, I'm a skateboarder to my core. I enjoy surfing, and I've surfed a long time. You know, I love these things. They're not going away, but you know, who says I can't go and try and learn something new at my age? You know, I mean, I might even have a fight. I might even be having a fight later in the year, you know.
Love
and I'm
it.
like, people are like, you're too old. I'm like, dude, I feel stronger than I ever have. And I'm 46, and I just think this is a real byproduct of a sober life as well. That 10 years of sobriety has just given me this gift of good health generally. And I'm more inspired than ever. And
I love it.
Yeah, and I find it really cool, you know, connecting with people like you too, who are in a pursuit of different goals and dreams. And that's why I'm so grateful to have you back on the show, brother.
Oh man, I'm stoked to be here. And you know, I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm grateful to be here. And you know, you talk about being 46. I'm 40. Yeah, I'm 46 as well. And it's like the paradigm of that too old mindset is it's I guess it's a privilege to be in the presence of other people that are joining us, our generations, in dismantling that illusion, really. Just and the people that are before us still like doing stuff. Kelly Slater, all these amazing. Mike Tyson, I've watched him train recently. Just so many different people with like the generation above us that are showing us something different, and we continue to be a part of that. And I love it. And it's what's interesting is it's that whole too old mindset is still out there. You know, recently I probably like 6 months ago now, I forget how long ago, but I dislocated my shoulder and like fractured one of the bones, had this like gnarly injury. And the first thing that someone said to me, one of the nurses in the emergency room, was like, aren't you too old for this? Or something along those lines. And I'm like full on shoulder out. I was like, absolutely not. Every bit of it's worth it. You know, I'm kind of like in like mode of they haven't given me anything to relax, or shoulder's still out. And it was just the first reaction was like, no, absolutely not. This is worth every bit of it, you know? And so yeah, I respect you and honor you for just being a part of that and stating that. Like, dude, I mean, the beautiful thing about aging, if you put the time and effort into like taking care of yourself and being on whatever program you want, but just doing the things that are gonna give you more vitality and stuff, it's almost like you're better. You know, you feel better when you're older, because not only are you like, you know, your body more, you're just figuring out ways to take care of yourself better, but you have, I think for me personally, I mean, my mindset is in a way different place than when I like was super young and had that youth on my side. So it all combines, and yeah, man, never too old. I have goals for when I'm 70, whatever, like skate goals, different things. It's, you know, but you know, not to say it doesn't take more work, because it does, to do anything we do. It's really easy. I see how people get lazy and don't want to push to do anything, which no disrespect to them or no judgment. It's everyone has like their own decision on how they want to live their life. But me personally, I've just never felt like I wanted to stop being active and being as like, you know, I guess, yeah, as active as I possibly can. It's the way it is.
I kind of feel like you become a master, and if you don't stop like being active like we have, I think you become a master. You start your training techniques, and methods become more refined because you know what works and what doesn't now, and and I think you become so much more in tune with your body. You know where your weaknesses are, you know where your strengths are, and you work around them. But like you were saying, in my 20s and 30s, I was just going in blindly and doing more damage to myself, and it's that old adage of working smarter, not harder, and I watch all the skate clips that you do and you put up, and I see a person who is determined, but very much working in a smart way within his boundaries. And for longevity, I mean, granted, you said you dislocated your shoulder recently, but hey, listen, that you want to, you got to pay to play sometimes, but that's not.
And that was on like I take strategic risk. I think I'm not jumping down like crazy stairs or anything like that. Although I was at this spot, like a while back with this young person I love that I had the opportunity to skate with, and next thing you know, I was jumping down like a 9 set or whatever. I was like, and there was this weird crack at the bottom, so I had to clear it. And it was a run up it was just and we went from skating a curve straight to this. And of course, he did it first try. So like sometimes I'm in the mode, and I was feeling that, but I limit my jumps, And on that note, when it comes to skating, I'm just sidetracking a little bit, but man, so much respect for all the young shredders that give the older people out there out there doing their thing the level of love and respect that they do, and the encouragement and hype. I have so many younger people I get to skate with that are just absolute rippers, and it's like to feel their push and energy and excitement of like while we're skating is always very much appreciated. It's definitely value that love just from the overall community, like just embracing the older generations that are still out there wanting to be a part of it.
Again, this is why I love skateboarding communities the best. It's sort of like there's no age, and there's so much respect, and like I said, we can be in our 40s and go skating with 18-year-olds, and there's age isn't even a question if you're out there having fun and being positive and encouraging one another, and I'm actually quite in awe of how much respect the younger generations do have for the older crew. I feel like
because they could think of us as being in their way, really, honestly. Sometimes we're just out there, because the levels are so different, but nah, man, they share the floor, and I'm always grateful.
Yeah, it amazes me actually. Yeah, they could definitely write us off, but I think they're nicer than when I was young. We had a bit more of a chip. I think we had a bit more of a chip on our shoulder because we were back then just rejects. We were like sort of the losers at high school. We weren't cool at all. And so, and we were getting, ostracized in the streets more. But now it's funny. I was watching some skaters in the street the other day. Some dude was doing a handrail, and just members of the general public are just standing around filming on their iPhones, and
that's
just
incredible.
Like, what?
It's incredible.
Anyway.
Yeah, when we were younger, there were definitely kids in middle school that parents wouldn't let them hang out with me because I skated. They were like, no, can't hang out with him. He's one of those skater kids. But, before we go on, back to the injury thing, though. So,
yes.
Like, being older and getting injured, it's now when I get an injury that's, like, significant, one that has me, like, needing to take some time off or whatever, I get just as aggressive about my injuries as I do with skating or anything else I do. It's like full on. I treat it like I'm doing a battle to get a trick. I'm going to do everything I absolutely can to get better and to be stronger than I was before the injury. Like with my shoulder, it was like I was grateful for this opportunity to connect with a movement coach in the UK that skates, and the anti-fragile movement. Super rad dude. and like really, really helpful along the way. But right away, I just engaged with everything he told me to do. I just went at it as hard as possible, and everything else that I found on my own, any kind of like, extra nutrition that I could give to help heal, like, muscle and ligaments, and it just like treated it like it was my job, literally. And I feel like I was able to come back as quickly as I did from the injury because of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Diet is so overlooked when it comes to rehabbing injury. And just to relate a story, I had an ongoing ankle injury, wouldn't heal, had 2 surgeries, and finally went to one doctor, and he said, "Hey, have you ever tried, cutting out refined sugars or maybe cutting down your use of alcohol? It's almost like you've got like a type of inflammation and gout in the joint." He's like, maybe try cutting dairy out as well. And so I was like, okay, like out of all the doctors, he's the first doctor to say it, and I did that, and then the injury just started healing miraculously. People overlook that. I think people overlook that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But listen, Ricky, it's so great to have you back on the show, and I want to say like a bit of a public thank you for lining up the Chris Markovich episode. I know you're friends with Chris, and you were the catalyst for that episode, which was actually the most listened to episode of 2022.
I love it.
No surprises, but what was interesting to come out of that was there's like a lot of non-skaters really listened to it and loved it as well. And going back to what we've just been talking about, it was just like he was just a real good example of being able to, fulfill your passions and dreams at the age of 50 in skateboarding,
Yeah.
So.
And, I was happy to do it because I love listening to Chris's stories, and, I thought that you guys would have a great episode and conversation. And Chris is an absolute legend, and just an all around incredible person to call a friend. He's like, there's so much more to Chris than skateboarding, not to minimize everything about everything that he's accomplished in skateboarding and what he continues to do on a skateboard. And that's been the catalyst for so much, but he's just a rad person. So I'm glad you guys got to talk. And I would suspect that people outside of skateboarding would, it's like what you're talking about, the UFC fighters. It's like when you peel back the layers of what people are doing to live their best life, you can't help but to respect it. And Chris is a great example of, staying committed and dedicated to who he is as an individual, and being true to that. So good stuff.
Tell us about your writing journey to date. So you're an author of numerous books, specifically one that really drew me to you, which was the Thank You Skateboarding book. Where are you at with this journey now? Are you writing a new book at the moment? How's your public speaking gigs going, post-COVID lockdown? Just give us an update since last episode.
I'm the Thank You Skateboarding's book 8, just to put a number on it. And I am finishing the 9th book now. I'm probably at the place where I'm going to do one more read through and hand it off to my editor. It's the process of writing is one thing. You just get into it, you're writing, you're going through stuff, you're reflecting, you're sharing, you're kind of like going through it. But once it gets to, it's like another phase of it where, I start pretty much just visualizing every single word. I start to get familiar with every word in the book and what says what. If there's something way back in the book that I say it in the beginning, all this stuff, my mind is really, just engage with it in a different way. It's less heart, more mind, just pulling together, but also allowing that heart to stay true, because, for example, this time handing off to the editor, there has to be a point where it's like, all right, I've done everything I can with this. Now let me hand it off. And then when that happens, we go through some phases and cycles. Like just depends on how many rounds we do. But then it becomes a point where you just pretty much have to hit go and let it go for what it is and move on, because I could keep a book in editing for years if I wanted to, because there's a certain, like, there's insecurities that come up. There's a sense of vulnerability of things I'm about to share. And once it goes published, it's just kind of is what it is. If there's things you missed or whatever, let it go. So it's at that phase, that real exciting phase at the same time right now with that book, where I'm like, oh, it's getting close. I'm in that phase where, yep, it's written, it's done. I'm just starting to pull it together now, and like kind of doing the layout, and you start comping up some covers and going for sharing it, which is super exciting. This one is, I'm real excited to share it. When it comes in with the speaking, that's like slowly opened up after COVID. It was crazy, Shan. Like there was so much momentum going, and I went to this high school, right, where it was the last school, and my fifth book is one I dedicated to youth, and the youth are really, they're just important to me, because that was some of the most troubled times of my life. And I feel like when people get to a certain age, when they're younger, like it's just kind of, they're a little bit overlooked, in terms of how we can best serve them, in my opinion. So that book I wrote to, like, I would go in and do all these talks and share, like connect with them, share my like story, troubled childhood and being stabbed and that whole thing that we shared before. And I talked to you about before, and then I would just leave, and I felt like, you know what, I want to do more, because I felt the connection. I would always feel this raw connection, and people would be vulnerable and talk and open up about what they're dealing with. And so I was like, let me just write something that I could put in their hands, where it just keeps the conversation going, of just affirming their greatness and just encouraging them and motivating and that kind of thing. So I dedicated that one to youth. So I was like, there were several schools getting copies for like high schools, middle schools. I had some funding to get them into schools, and it was like going really well. And then I went to a school, dropped off books, did a talk, had an amazing time. And then COVID came, and it was just like, it was so interesting, because every time I go to a school, I really try to take it in. Like, man, if I died today, I feel complete, like in this moment, to share this time and open up. And then it was like, all of a sudden, it just stopped. And over the course of getting things back together, it's kind of like, there's just this weird thing where there was so much momentum going, like for so long, for years, I was pushing this ball, and then it stopped. And now it's like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. The people who make the decisions to get you to come into the schools, you're just like, when you're in the zone, you're in the flow of it all, you're right there all the time. You're like connecting. This goes to this opportunity, leads to that opportunity, ongoing. And then it's just been a matter of piecing it together since things have opened up. I was at a school last week, and it was incredible. And then I'm going to a school that's like 5 hours away from me, and this organization bought several hundred copies of that Just for Youth book for high school. So I'm super stoked on that. And just continuing to put that energy out there, like I was telling my wife, I was like, I just feel like energetically that was that little shift. Sometimes you need those shifts to turn the switch back on in that direction. And man, that moment in the school, it was, I try to limit how many talks I do in the day, but that one I did 7 back to back, like kind of assembly style. So I was like, that's what they needed. I'm going to do it. And, man, there was one part of the conversation in one of the classes where I looked out, and you teach high school, so you know the power in this. I look out, there were probably 10 students full on just tears, crying, like And it hits me just like thinking about it, because seeing their pain and like their vulnerability was so humbling, and just like it was because we were just talking about dealing with stuff underneath the surface, and I was talking to them about how just because they showed up to school today was, I have so much respect and admiration for them, because the truth is, and I just started breaking it down, some of you beneath the surface right now didn't eat dinner last night. Some of you don't know where you're going when you leave here. Some of you like, dude, so I was just breaking down all these different like realities, and people were breaking down, teachers were breaking down. And like, then I was, of course, like, I don't hold it back, when I'm talking to them, if I'm feeling it, and I just let it go. And then at the end of it, one of the students, probably senior, is like, so how are you doing? Like, honestly, man, I'm hurting because I have to see you guys hurt. Like, it's just such this power. I know I'm kind of just going off a little bit, but the power, and it was powerful for me, and also like heavy on my heart. And it was that like reminder of, that's why I've done everything I've done for you, because it was apparent to me how much they need the raw, real, open connection and conversations about things about life, about things they're dealing with and working through as young people. So, yeah, man. So that's happening in the book. It's just been just trying to push through and navigate everything the best way I can. And, one foot in front of the other, onward and upward.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to unpack about what you were just saying. The biggest lesson I've learned working in schools and now doing the podcast is that you just can never underestimate who is watching and listening. And there's a huge responsibility there for that. So you have, and that's why you have a real responsibility to take any moment where you're speaking in a public forum or showing yourself in a public space. That's a huge responsibility, because you don't know who's watching. Absolutely. And you don't know who's listening, and you don't know who needs to hear what you have to say. But it also works conversely as well, negatively. So if you're going to put bad stuff out there, that's actually having an influence on someone as well, and can be detrimental. And I don't take that shit lightly anymore. And if I link it to social media, where people are trying to be visible and they're putting themselves out there, they are having an influence. Whether you might have 10 followers or 10,000 followers, you are impacting someone every time you post something or say something publicly. And it's up to you to decide whether that's going to be of positive inspiration, or is it negative, And it amazes me how many people don't respect that, I guess is what I want to say. Your story is so compelling. It's definitely going to have an impact, man. And I'm so grateful for you for that. So, anyway, a bit of a rant, but I just want to get that out there. The other thing I wanted to tap into was, you mentioned, with your current book, it's like, I think I'm ready to let go of it. This is an artist's conundrum in a number of mediums. Now you have a lot of experience. Are you becoming more attuned to when it is time to let go?
Yeah, it's just always an ongoing work in progress to be at a place where you let yourself move forward, and not get caught up too much, but also, do everything you can and pay attention to every little fine detail, but then get to a place where you're good, you're done. So I feel like now at this point, with my experience and the books that I have, I've certainly learned a lot along the way, and it does get easier. And I put myself my first 5 books I had with a publisher, and then I re-released them independently, got my rights back, and the other ones have been independent straight since then. But what I do is I just put myself on a publishing sort of, not calendar, but like sequence of deadlines, just to like give myself those boundaries to where I know, all right, this is when I'm going to be done with it. Because if I was with the publisher, that's it. That's when you're done. It's because they have this ongoing publishing calendar and cycle, and you have to fit into that and have it ready to go for certain release dates and certain times of the year, because the window period is much longer with a publisher from ending the book before it comes out. At least that was my experience. So yeah, I just kind of put myself in that mode of like publishing mode, essentially, once I'm done writing the first draft.
Must be a good motivator, because it would be easy to procrastinate, I'm sure.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I pull my inspiration. Yeah, it's easy just to keep going and like whatever, just find a reason, find excuses, or talk yourself out of doing anything that you want to share with the world, whether it be a piece of art or a book, whatever, podcast, whatever it might be. But the other side of it is I also start getting more motivation because I feel the inspiration from the people that I think will benefit from it. Like now it's like I've had these conversations recently where I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, I can't wait to share this with this person. I can't wait to like put it out there. It kind of times out sequentially in a way where it's like, okay, these are those reminders from the universe, whatever you want to call it, like this all right, this is time, let's put it out there.
You feel that
there's been a lot of that happening.
You feel that sense of purpose?
Yeah, I feel like this book is really there's a lot behind it. It's on mental health and depression, and it's really it's probably one of the most vulnerable books I've written. I've written some pretty vulnerable stuff in my 6th book, but it's something that I can't wait to share with people, just because I hope it helps them as much as it helped me writing it.
Well, I was going to ask if you want to share a basic synopsis of the book. You've just sort of mentioned that the key themes are, mental health, specifically depression. Do you want to give us a brief overview, or you want to hold back on that?
I'll give a bit. I'll hold back some, but it's it's just more of like just kind of unpacking some of the practices and mindsets and things that I do personally to work through like heavy onsets of depression. And I was writing it in a time where like I just got into a really dark place, like pretty unexpectedly. And it was, I felt like writing it was what I needed to do to remind myself of what I needed to do to battle the like the heaviness I was feeling in the dark, and like pull myself out of the dark place. So it's just kind of unpacks things that have been helpful for me, and continue to be helpful for me to work through. Like I said, in that time, mainly writing it, like the core of the time writing it was like just going through a really, really heavy time, just battling. And, I've had some serious onsets of depression over the years, and this one was probably one of the most scary ones I had in a long time. So that's what I'm like, just kind of the book sort of came out during that time. And, it's like, as I said, it was reminders to me, but then also like in some ways like gave it what I was working through purpose beyond myself at the same time.
Well, I want to, I guess, on this journey of navigating bouts of, poor mental health, and we all experience it to varying degrees. I think for some it's much more extreme than others. It's a spectrum,
Yeah.
Have you been able to identify the foundations or the key sources of your mental health? I mean, we hear a lot of talk about childhood trauma. Could you trace it back to that kind of stuff, or is it other things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's like part of my, my informative years of development beyond so much trauma and chaos and turmoil. Like, just like the stability factor wasn't there, and the trust of caregivers, all that stuff. And yeah, and I agree. There's so many spectrums of mental health challenges and depression, and I don't minimize one over the other. I feel like if someone's in a like cloud of depression, it's there's no real, like, in my mind, of how bad is it type thing. It's not fun to deal with. It's different than being in a bad mood or having an off day. It's just something that kind of affects you on many levels, and it's so. To answer your question, to trace it back, I mean, I know when I first started like kind of experiencing it in elementary school, like, man, this is sort of weird. And then like getting into middle school where like I would have numbing episodes of depression and paralyzing and like self-harm, like all these different like suicidal ideologies. And that just progressed from there, like through high school. So, and then, you learn tools and like I feel like everything I do, my whole life is orchestrated around like, physical, mental, and spiritual health to most degrees. And like, so there's things you do to keep it at bay. But then there's times where no matter how hard you work, how disciplined you are in your practices, you go to sleep and you wake up and there's just a blanket laying on top of you, a weighted blanket that it's hard to move. And sometimes you can shake it right off and you move on, but then that cloud goes away. And then sometimes that cloud lingers for longer than you can make sense out of. And that's when you like pull as hard as you can and lean as hard as you can into everything you need to do to take care of yourself. So I can't really pinpoint it to one specific thing, just because there's been combinations of things. And with this episode, I feel like there were some triggers, of course, that like, a lot of transition and things happening with like COVID, everything's slowing down, having my child, all these different like variables where I don't really unpack that in the book, because it's not so much about pointing the finger of what it is or where it comes from as much as it is about healthy ways to deal with it, and work through it. So
that's a really good point, because I think a lot of people can get really caught up in the past, especially when it comes to mental health. I know that's something I did a lot of. I kept ruminating on past events, and they were causing depression, things that I just had no control over, and also no ability to change because they're in the past. And, then you start to create a narrative of actually how those events occurred. And that narrative is actually sometimes not true either, because, it's like the old Chinese whispers game where, the message gets passed down the line, and then by the time it gets to the end, it's a completely different message. And I believe that our mind and our ego have this ability to do that to ourselves as well, to justify, the way we're feeling, or justify our own behaviours and our own part in things that have occurred. That's been the biggest learning lesson for me with dealing with my bouts of poor mental health. So I really relate to what you're saying. I think it's much more, in relation to what you're saying, it's much more progressive just to deal with the present feelings and emotions, and that's it.
Yeah.
And dig into the tools.
Because sometimes it's about survival. It's like you can
Yes.
analyze and stuff I feel like when you're out of that fog, but when you're in the fog, it's like for me personally, it's there's times it gets pretty heavy where I have to survive from myself. Survive from what my mind's telling me is the answer, and what is the the probably worst case scenario to handle sometimes, and how I feel, and then your mind just starts going, and if you're not super active and paying attention to what your mind's doing, next thing you know, you're in some pretty scary situations with yourself, with the measures and the things needed to take your life even, and like, and for me, like having those experiences and being in those situations, but being grateful for the awareness to grab a hold of my mind. Sometimes I feel like just in time, and then like knowing once you got a hold of it, where you can go with it, what you need to do very quickly to pull yourself off the ledge, if you will. And then when you talk about like where it comes from and triggers, it's like, going back to the young people, like when my son was born, I like had all these crazy heavy emotions coming up with like almost memories, not like specific memories, but like this realization of like, man, I remember back when I was like emotionally, mentally abused, like to like younger, and then all of a sudden like feeling that, like how maybe bad I was treated when I was an infant and like baby, and kind of feeling that pain when that happened. So, and then when we were talking about like the importance of what we say to people, and what we talk about publicly, and the influence we have on people, and talking about young people and my drive for them, it's sometimes through our lifetimes, some of us may be more prone to like severe or different spectrums of mental health or depression or whatever. But like you think about it, the words that some of us hear so much of in negative regards, or like aren't really like spoken like positively to, or loving or kind or whatever, so that's where I say there's no real one thing, because that all stuff becomes a part of your psyche. And then I think in some weird ways that kind of creates these like lack of like worth, or like I'm not enough, and these like untruths basically. And when you're like feeling heavy or feeling down, I think those things come alive more than ever in those times of like, just whatever, it's not worth it, you're not, the loop. So yeah, to answer it again, I don't necessarily point it to one thing. Like I said before, it's more of just how to get through it and how to survive is where I go when I'm in a dark cloud. But what's crazy is about those clouds is, like I said, sometimes they go and leave quick, sometimes they linger. And then sometimes it's just like, man, no matter what you're doing, it just keeps like every day it's there, showing up. And dude, this one, I gotta say, Shannon, it went on for like probably a solid year of just like, just felt like I like couldn't get a grasp for air, but like I was pushing every day, going skating and doing all the things. And like, I have moments, but it was just this constant like, dude, swimming up at this stream, can't do my, it's like the currents but I kept swimming, and I'm grateful that I did. And the first section of the book is about like just understanding what your whys are, and those were
understanding what your whys are.
Yeah, just those were the things that kind of was the start of just keeping my head above water, and keeping myself pushing.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love what you just said, but I just kept on swimming, That's the best.
Yeah, man.
I mean, personally, I feel like, that pandemic stuff, dude, it really exacerbated a lot of things for a lot of people. I mean,
yeah,
I went through a divorce at the very start of it, and the divorce procedure lasted the duration of it. I mean, if I'm straight, it almost killed me, and I feel so lucky that I had tools in place from work that I had done on myself and in my life prior to that to fall back on. And, if I didn't, I think I would have been dead. But if anything, like a lot of suffering and hardship, there's a saying I like. It's you can grow through what you go through. And that's how I feel. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
But I just want to add another thing to what you were saying. I've been counselling a friend who has been suicidal. Lots of suicidal ideation, and for some might say for good reason. There's been a lot of injustice in this person's life. There really has. And, we've gone back and forth about it, reasons why we should stay alive, Should you kill yourself? Maybe it's an option, And we came to this conclusion that we firmly believe that while there's still air in your lungs, it's not your choice. It's the universe and the world has put you here for a reason. And when it's your time to leave this world, that time will come, and it won't be your decision. And because you never know what you never know what the tide's going to bring in. You never know what's going to blow your direction in the wind, and how things can just turn on a dime. You'll get beat down, but then every now and then, if you keep swimming against the tide and the river flow, you'll have a win. You'll get that life raft, and some things will turn around, and they always turn around. It's seasonal. Like, we live in a world that runs on seasons, and it's dynamic. Seasons. It's always changing. But I know I'm going on a massive rant here, but I don't really care. It's a dynamic world, and I just think you really got to hang on for the ride.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my take on what you're saying.
And it's good that he's talking to you about it, or she. I don't know if you said, but it's good that the person's talking about it and has you to talk about it, and that also is shows a good strength and willingness on their part to talk about it, because that's not always easy, Well,
why do you think that?
Shame, guilt, I mean, the truth is, and not wanting to bring other people down, not wanting to affect other people's vibes and moods. And really, if you're thinking about taking your life, or feeling the heavy and depressed and down, and then, intellectually it doesn't make sense to feel that way, or to be that way, or in some cases maybe so, but either way, it's not it feels good to feel that way. There's two separate things. It's how you feel and how you feel about how you feel. And so I think that's where the shame comes from. It's dude, this is horrible. I feel lame for even being like this right now. And then that just creates this whole other cycle of, so I think there's a lot of shame involved. And, from a society standpoint, I think that we're just now starting to make progress with mental health, and being more compassionate and caring and respectful to people who are dealing with mental health issues. Because, generally speaking, there's a narrative that will say, like, just get over it, whatever, everyone has bad days, like those kind of things. And that's not necessarily the case or the most ideal way to work or be there for someone that's dealing with some mental health issues, of whatever capacity it is. So yeah, shame, I think, is the best way to kind of sum that up.
So invasive, shame. It's so invasive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know how to identify it. They don't actually understand what it means, but they are suffering from shame. And I think that's the first step, is just identifying what shame is to you. For me, it's when my mind says things to me like, you're worthless, you're a piece of shit, you're not needed in this world. Like that's shame. Or if and it doesn't when I make a mistake. So if you ever see me battling a trick at the skate park, I've got this threshold, and if I don't land it, then you should hear. I think battling a trick is like a meditation, and I get to a point where I turn into this madman and I start. Well, I do. I'm that guy. I'm from the early 90s, man. I start throwing my board. I start throwing my board around. I'll start talking to myself like, "You're fucking useless. You're a kook. Oh my god, this is all this trick is, and you can't even do it. You kook. You're a phony." Like, and I'll walk around saying it. Like, my friends have videoed me doing it. And back in the 90s when focusing boards was cool, I was that guy that couldn't land a trick in 10 tries. Boom, focus my board. Now I don't focus boards but it's not unlike me to pick my board up and punch it, and it's just like,
dude, you know what you got to think of when you're in the battle? Think of that as the same thing as in the cage. If you lose your head in the cage, you're losing the battle.
Thank you, sir.
That's how I see the same. Like, I see that in the same way with battle and tricks. It's just like, I feel it inside, but I work really hard to like laugh it off or contain it and go through those. That's why I love the battle so much, because there's so much mental exercising that goes on during a battle. It's like, and talk about a tool, like, man, if I get lost in the battle, everything else is gone away. Just rationale, all of it most of the time. So I'm not thinking about anything I'm worrying about or whatever. It's just that perpetual cycle to do the trick. And so I think of it as a great mental exercise. There was definitely a time where I was screaming and throwing my boards and stuff like that. I do my best to not go there.
It's aside from skateboarding,
it's work though.
It is work.
Go ahead, sorry.
Aside from skateboarding, what are some other tools that work for you personally?
Time in nature, meditation, prayer, meditation, journaling, kind of writing in my notebook, visual arts, like pencil stuff. Walking, just going on a walk, going in the water, cold showers are phenomenal way to start your day. Sauna, just all types of stuff. I have quite a big tool bag to lean into, which I'm grateful for.
Nice, man. It's good. I love all those things. It's funny, the last couple of years with the difficulties I've faced in my personal life, I've done a lot of meditation, I've done breath work, a lot of that over the years, but just for some reason I just couldn't do them. I just didn't want to be alone in my head. And the only thing that the best tool for me was to go to the boxing gym and punch the bag or spar or pad work. And it's still and I see it as this full-on meditation. Like, I needed really heavy physical workouts. I'd walk out of there completely dead. That was what got me through. And it did wonders. And people at the time said, you're training too much. And I'm just like, well, this is all that's working for me right now. And the alternative is to do something really like negative behaviors. I could easily turn to alcohol or substances in this situation. So this is the alternative, and I'll take this alternative any day of the week. So
Absolutely.
I just think it's finding what works for you. We talk a lot about meditation in the world, but I really don't. I'm not convinced it's for everyone. I'm really not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, though, it's finding what works for you. And another thing other than exercise I do, and I forgot to mention, which it's not on my mind heavy and it hurts my heart, is surfing, just because I haven't been able to be on it as much as I once was, with just the way like our schedule is right now with our son. The windows for it to time out for the windows of my time to go and also there to be surf isn't just hasn't worked out in a little while. So my like trips to the coast, which is like 3 hours away, 2.5 hours away, have not been happening now. But like you said, when you said it was a season, that's what my wife and I, because she surfs as well, we've just been telling each other it's just a season. And we can't wait to make that a more consistent part of our lives again. Surfing, not that we couldn't pull it off now. It's just the way we're choosing to do things with our son without daycare and things like that right now, and the way we have to balance our schedule is just how it's worked at this point.
Yeah. How are you choosing to do things with your son in terms of daycare?
He has only been with us at this point. He's not in a daycare until he is in a position to tell us about how his day was and how he feels and things like that. We just wanted to do it this way. And also I have a child development background. I did child development in school and human development, and then I've researched quite a bit on the informative years and just some schools of thought and beliefs I have about the development of healthy attachment relationships in the earlier phases of life, without having any type of trust compromise or the feeling of the trust compromised by the primary caregivers. So that's what we've been leading the way with, and not to discount the need that some people have for their kids to be in daycare right away. And I totally respect and appreciate it. We've just fortunately we've been able to manage it at this point, which we're super grateful for. It's been a big challenge and not the easiest thing to pull off, but we're doing it, and grateful that we are.
Nice, man. No, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned that. You don't want to discount, the situations of others and their needs for putting their children in daycare. I mean, my children went through daycare, and it does. I must admit, it's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. That I do pay someone else to look after my kids while I go and work. When I feel like
it's an interesting concept. I've been toying. I'm like, it's such an interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about it. Like, you have kids, and then other people are taking care of your kids, are part of influencing them, and they're like influence the way they see the world, think about things, feel about things, pretty much raising them. But society, we have to work. Like, we have it set up where next year, we have a spot in this school that we're super stoked on. I know the director, and it's an amazing place, and they're very much in alignment with our philosophies on, redirection and how we handle certain things, and also like encouraging from everything from an encouraging standpoint, empowering standpoint. It's a very interesting thing when you really think about that, even just all through school, like like every part of elementary, middle school, high. It's an interesting system that we've created as a society.
Well, I think parenting is the most important job in the world.
Yeah.
But we immediately relinquish it. So we can then, obviously we need to house and feed and clothe our children. I get that. But there's got to be a bit more of a balance there. I mean, and I trip out all the time because I'm like, I pay someone to look after my kids, or my kids go to someone to be looked after all day. But then I'm a teacher, and then I go to my job and look after someone else's kids all day. And I'm just like the kids of strangers. And I don't know. I mean, it's a big picture question. I don't have any solutions to it, but I'm like, have we sort of gone awry somewhere in our society? I think being with your children is the most important thing. And, especially like you said, in those real formative years, from the ages of 0 to 10,
Yeah.
So, I don't know, man.
Because there's a time that quickly comes where they have other interests and things. You're not the center of their world anymore, That's just part of growing up and growth and different seasons. So, yeah, it is. I even think about it where, like, I'm already thinking about once he gets into grade school, thinking like, okay, so he'll be there this many hours a week. When you really count the hours, you're getting less time with your kids hour for hour than other people are. It's such an interesting, it's such a trip when you really think about it.
Put a price on that time.
I know, there is no price.
As cliche as it sounds.
We have it's like you said, we have bills to pay, we have things to do, it's just a interesting thing. And it's a fairly new thing when you look at it in terms of like evolution of humanity. It's not like it's been going on for thousands of years or anything. It's a fairly, like, the daycare's, like, that whole aspect of our society and the time at school and all those things are fairly new when you think about it.
Yeah, I agree. I just think this is a bit of a weird statement to say, but I think it's the fallout from capitalism is the loss of time with children. I think it's the most severe fallout of a capitalist society. That's my opinion. Yeah. So, I just want to ask you a few more questions about being a creative and being a writer. I do speak to artists a lot, and I'm always very curious as to how they can sustain a living from following their passion and following their heart and following their dream. Are you at a point with your writing where it does sustain you and an ability to support yourself and your family?
It has gone up and down. There's different, been different seasons of it. Like, really the speaking has been that second pillar for me. That's been super helpful because that opens the doors for anything like bulk purchases on books. Right now it's like there's a dip for sure, and like I'm kind of, now that I've had a kid, I'm like thinking of other ways to just other avenues of like using my gifts and talents and passions, kind of aligning them more, just so there's like maybe like a more consistent mode of income, to offset the down cycles of it all. But yeah, I mean, for the last 10 years, the only thing I've done is books and talks. That's been like how I've made it. Right recently, like after the pandemic, I got certified to teach PE by like passing the state test. Do you teach PE?
That's my original training, was what we call in Australia PDHPE, which is a holistic subject of personal development, health, and physical education. Yeah,
nice.
That's
well,
my
so anyways, I was like, well, I go into the schools all the time. I love that. What does it look like to be somewhere more consistently and like develop some long-term relationships and use my passion for like wellness and health and just being outside, being active, encouraging some kids to kind of make sure they keep that as a part of their life, you know? So I did that. Right now I'm, because of our life plan and our family design of like, we're very intentional how we do things with time together and all these different aspects of our family that is beyond just income. So it's a matter of finding the right school and geographic location for that school and be in alignment with what I, feel and want to be a part of, and just kind of waiting for one of those opportunities. And if the right one comes together, I'll be doing that as well, just to like include that in the aspect of what I do. And also because of the scheduling, the time and all of those things, it still facilitates everything else I do, with writing and as long as I could still do the things I need to do with that and the talks and stuff. So that's on the horizon. I'm hireable as a PE teacher right now, but I'm not like just going out to get like the first PE teaching job. It's got to be right for me, my family, everyone involved, so. Yeah.
Nice, man. Yeah, don't want to like panic into the wrong job. I've done that because I was like, can just like, I've got to get something locked in. And then next thing you know, you're doing something you don't really like. I think there's some real value in being, staunch in doing things on your terms, and what's going to work best for you and your family. But balance is hard.
And the books, the books have the school next week and things, I'm grateful for like the opportunity to, and with my wife's support and like encouragement and stuff, just grateful for the opportunity to be able to, stay true to my dreams and also like just, be intentional with anything else that we add to our responsibilities,
Yeah. Intentional as in considering your wife and your child before you add to your responsibilities?
Well, yeah, just to make sure anything we do, it's just to make sure it works for all of us,
Yeah.
It works for our desire to spend time together, our family to be together, our overall household, well-being. Like for the last so long, I've had to divert some of my attention to certain things I do, and be more of like the stay-at-home parent role for my wife to do her thing. But it's what works best for our family, for us to be able to maintain, time before Everest goes into daycare.
I love that name. Everest, yeah?
Yeah.
So good.
Everest Reef Roberts.
Reef. Okay. Is there any significance to those names?
I mean, we both love the ocean, and the first one just sort of came one day. We had some name lists, and that was one that stuck. Gives them options,
Yeah.
He prefers Evie now.
Evie's cool.
Yeah, I asked him what he wants to be called, and he said Evie. He's like 2 and 4 months.
Yeah, I hiked to Mount Everest Base Camp, and I stood at the base of Mount Everest and felt humbled. And then I hiked to 6,000 meters to another peak close by and took a photo of the sun rising over Mount Everest. Most incredible. Sort of profound experience of my life, actually. So it's a nice name. Yeah.
Back to the pursuit of like dreams and art and stuff. It's along the time, because like my books went out to like the first book came out over 15 years ago, I think, and then when I left the like last job that I had maybe over 10 years ago, it's when I talk to people about it, it's not really, it doesn't matter like what money you're making from it or not making, or if you're like, if you need to do something else or whatever it may be. It's just it's a matter of doing something that you feel burning inside of you that needs to be done. You know, there's just something that speaks to us, or something that calls on us, and that's what I encourage everyone to do, is just lean into that, whatever that looks like or whatever that is. It doesn't have to be your like even your like livelihood or your income or anything. Just the fact of like nurturing those passions and those like, I guess, those strengths and things that we care about, just giving them their time and place to manifest in this world, that will leave ripples, like I think far past our time here, you know?
That's awesome message, man. Awesome message. I also think there's a level of consciousness required to even know what to lean into. And I think that's something people need to consider. You know, there's a lot of people out there who I feel don't have that thing that lights them up, or they do, but they don't know what it is exactly. They can't quite pinpoint it. And I think the only way it can be sort of discovered is through rigorous self-honesty and sitting quietly with yourself at times. I don't think people do enough of that, especially with the advent of mobile phones and tablets, because there's just so many distractions. You know,
and it doesn't. You're right, and it doesn't have to be meditation, like you said. Maybe it's not for everyone, but could just be sitting and just self-assessing, self-reflecting, evaluating your life, what makes you happy, what doesn't, and being honest with those answers. And, you know, one thing that I have found to be, it's a tool that I just recommend to anyone and everyone, like whether you're trying to figure out your truth or what to do in a relationship, work, dreams, working on your mental health, whatever. Get a notebook that you think is cool, that you like, that you're into, that you're just like, oh, this is all right. And get one of your favorite pens or writing utensils and just write 3 pages a day. Like it doesn't have to be every day, but on average 3, you know, every other day, whatever. Start writing. Don't think about what you're writing. Don't worry about grammar, punctuation, or like, you know, spelling, how it sounds, whatever. Just write and purge and let it out. And eventually your chatter will start to clear away, and things will start to come up in that process that you didn't even realize were there to think about or talk. It just opens, I feel like it just opens the gateway to so many different things. Just let it out, let it go, and let the pen or pencil flow.
Yes, sir. Just consistency. I had a street artist on here. He's a muralist. His name's Kane Horsbull. Goes by the name of Trait. And he said, I draw every day. I have my drawing, and he goes, every day. Some days I'll just draw a line on a page, but every day I sit there for a minute and I see what comes out of me. And over years of doing that, things will come out of you. The practice, the art will evolve. You know?
Well, and that's what the writing thing is. It could be anyone. You don't have to be doing it to write. Just do it to get your mind. You just open up different parts of your mind that you're just writing, like, oh, I'm frustrated, I'm angry. And this next thing you know, you're like writing about all kinds of like random stuff, because your mind is just like purging any of the stuff, you know, that's just getting in the way of you being able to tap into the things that will give you the answers you're seeking.
Would you say it funnels through the pen?
Yeah.
That time from the brain to the page, there's like a translation period there, right? It's a translation funnel.
Yeah, I believe so.
I reckon.
Not to mention it's a great therapeutic practice also. I mean, there's many therapists that will prescribe journal therapy to people, so it's just even just the feeling of moving your hand, the pen or pencil touching the paper, like all of those stuff sort of have therapeutic values to mixed in with it.
Yeah, I was talking to my psychologist friend about, like, I relate to what you're saying, and my friend who's a psychologist, we're talking about like podcast therapy, like, because and I've had a lot of guests say this to me.
I've never heard this. Tell me.
Well, I don't know if it exists. Him and I, like, it just came to me, and he was feeling the same way. It's like when you do a recording and you get someone to basically give somewhat of a testimony of their life, and then that person sits down and listens to themselves and the narratives that they've created and the way they tell their stories, and listen to themselves almost from like a third person perspective.
100%.
All of a sudden you're actually like looking at yourself in a different way, and I mean, I've done it constantly over the years. Like, I'll listen to myself and go, I didn't realize that I said that, and I don't realize that I say that, or I use that expression a lot, and is that expression serving me? And that's been one of the biggest outcomes of this. And my psychologist friend was saying, like, maybe he could, record, you record your therapy sessions and get the patient to listen to what they said in the therapy session and replay it and help them process it and understand it from a third person perspective. It's just like, there might be something to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably already been done. It's probably already been done.
Well, there's like chair therapy where therapists will have you talk to an empty chair if there's like maybe someone that, hurt you or something like that. So it's kind of along those lines, but I could see where playing it back could be pretty powerful. I think you guys are onto something.
I'm sure it's been done before. I don't know, like, just something. I don't know. Like I said, not. Well, it can't be original.
You know what it is? It's good just to talk to people. It's not, whether you're the host or the guest, we all crave a sense of belonging and connection, and I think podcasts are a beautiful platform, not only to encourage, inspire people and teach people, but also for the people who are on the show to connect, to have long form conversations about whatever may come up. Some are more formal than others, but at the end of it all, people are just having conversations that, and just by their very nature, are good for us as individuals and human beings. So
I also think the fact there's a microphone, though, put in front of someone's mouth, it increases this level of accountability in what they say. So therefore, they become more measured in what they're saying.
Yes.
As opposed to just a conversation with a friend where you can just download on them everything that comes out. I don't think there's as much consideration of what's being said.
Absolutely.
So, and that's where I think there's this weird power to it. With the microphone becomes like this honesty stick.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey,
good. It's like a talking stick. The standard is high. If you have a microphone, the standard is high.
You're going to be less inclined to bullshit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you do bullshit, you're accountable now. It's on record,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, no matter what it is, it's good stuff. But I do agree that there is something that happens when there's a microphone involved, and you're being recorded. There's a certain level of accountability there of what you're saying and what you're putting out there. Well, at least for us there is, but I wouldn't say that's the case everywhere. Unfortunately, I think some people don't necessarily care. what they say or don't say.
Which again goes back to what I was saying, is like they're not respecting their responsibility
Yes.
to others, because they don't realize that whatever that they are impacting someone and they don't even know who that is, especially if they're in, and again, doesn't matter how big your following is, if you know, you never know who's watching and listening, and it's got to be respected always, you know. So
Yeah, absolutely. Even without a mic, just in your community, your daily lives, like, you never know who's, especially young people, are just watching you and learning and picking up on whatever you're doing or however you're acting. It's like we kind of go full circle. When we were younger, we saw 40 as done. Like the people who were 40 that I saw, generally speaking, like they weren't skating at all. They weren't like, I mean, I'm sure there were people in the world that were doing those things. It was just my environment, the people that I saw around, you know. So, but that's what I was learning from, like shaping my understanding of what it meant to get older until, you know, I started to see different examples of that as I did age.
yeah, I mean, imagine how many kids you've influenced at that skate park at St. Petersburgh, and they've been watching you getting after a trick, and they're like, you know, that guy's in his 40s and he's getting after it. Like, you know, that means I want to be like that, you know? Like, you know, they're starting to imagine the long game, whereas like when we were younger, we weren't thinking of the long game at all.
No way. There was not a long game. You thought you had to stop skating when you were in your like 20s.
Yeah,
You're like, oh man, it's just gotta do the life thing. And then it's just,
biggest regret.
yeah.
It's my biggest regret, not being true to myself and conforming down that road that everyone else was going, and I never really sat right with me. But I still like, okay, no, I'm too old to skate now. I'm going to pull back from that. And too old to chase that dream. I need to get a solid job and get a mortgage. Let's go. You know, this is what we're. Yeah. I question it. Again, I don't want to discredit anyone that is enjoying that, but I don't know if it's for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate where you're coming from. When my second book's called What Really Matters, and it was like this reflection of, you know, really in the grand scheme of it all, what really matters, what does it all amount to? And at that time, I had known like multimillionaires that passed away, just randomly, or this dude who's worth like 50 something million, and like he passed away, and then multiple friends just passing away. And at that time I was full throttle buying like investments, just you know, I had one house, I had another condo that I'd rented, and I had what do you call it, escrow of like another condo getting ready to close. I owned a car dealership, and all these things were happening. Yeah, dude, because I was working there for 10 years. I eventually bought this dealership from the guy, like was full into it. Like I had this whole plan mapped out of like what I needed to do next, and had this whole strategy that I was following, working. And then after I was working, just kind of reflecting, like, man, what am I doing with my life right now? This stuff is, I feel this societal success and the momentum, but I didn't feel like, I felt like something was missing. I wasn't content and happy. And then I had let stuff go away that I cared about. I wasn't skating as much. I just wasn't being me, you know? And then I wrote this book, published it, and then all of a sudden it was like, I got to leave this whole thing that I just spent all these years going after. And it made no sense to me. It made no sense to anyone around me. Everyone was like, dude, what are you doing? And next thing you know, I was just untangling this crazy web that I created, losing a bunch of money, just full on. Like, I think people on the outside thought I lost, like something happened inside, or I snapped, you know, because it was really looking on the outside, looking in, it didn't make sense. And, yeah, man, it just was not to say there's anything wrong with it or anything. And, you know, of course now there's like different, I look back, I'm like, well, now at this point, all of that would be paying off really great. And now that I have a kid, like all these things would be, I would be on a whole different level. But at the same time, I wouldn't take back all of the things I've done on this journey since I freed myself of so much of the things that were taking my attention that weren't necessarily anything that I really ever wanted. It was just more of like this social pressure to climb whatever ladder or whatever it was of success that I really fell deeply into, kind of went extreme with it maybe. But yeah, it was a resting realization I had. And that was at maybe like, I think 28, 29, and then just untangled that web. It took a little while to untangle it all, but it was a wild ride.
Dude, you've lived like many lives in your life, haven't you, man?
I would say I would definitely had that. One was that was an interesting life. It's crazy because now when people like talk to me and stuff, I think because I'm like this writer and like do my thing and, you know, have a 2005 Honda Element. Like I don't really look like, you know, I'm anyone that they should ask any kind of like financial questions for, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, but yeah, I have a lot of background and experience in that business world, like with properties and just business in general. You know, the car dealership was pretty big. We had a repair shop. We had a finance company. It was all wild, man. I learned an incredible amount from this gentleman though, that like, he kind of just took me under his wing and taught me an incredible amount about business and different aspects of life, you know. And I think a lot of it too, that was partnered with growing up poor, just feeling like, you know, this idea, I've had this belief that many of my problems were connected to the fact that I grew up poor and I didn't have money. So if I just made enough money, made a lot of money, drove whatever car I wanted, had whatever, the jewelry, all that stuff, then I'd be happy. And then, you know, it's like, oh, one nice car. I thought I'd be happy. Well, let me get a weekend car. Okay. Oh, I'm not happy. Let me get a motorcycle too. Nah, and just one thing after another, these like experiences would fade so quickly in real time of things that I thought like would make me happy when I got to them. So it was, I just had to go through it to understand that not that stuff is important or doesn't have value in certain ways to people or just in general, we need money, but understand that the pursuit of in itself of those things will always leave you empty and leave you searching for more. There has to be more purpose and meaning behind it all. And that's what was lacking, I think, at those times.
Yeah. I think you said it perfectly. It'll leave you empty, you know. And I think it's fulfillment that we're chasing, not happiness, not money, fulfillment, you know. So, and I know for me, I'm finding fulfillment from time with my children, ultimately, and then my passions, you know. And it's things, skateboarding, surfing, MMA recently, podcasting. You know, it's deeply fulfilling for me. Speaking to people like you and learning from people like you constantly, deeply fulfilling. And one of the most amazing things happened recently. I had a counsellor from a mental health hospital. He worked there, and he just reached out to me randomly and said, just letting you know that, you know, we share various episodes in our group therapy groups to our patients and get them to listen to various episodes, and then we discuss them at our group therapy sessions. And
wow!
And he said, I'm starting to tear up. And he said, you know, you've saved probably a few lives here, and I've just the feeling that came through me, and is even coming through me now, is just like nothing I've ever experienced, you know.
Wow.
And I always, again, I know podcasts are cliche. Everyone's got a podcast these days. And I'm glad there's something to these things. And I'm just so glad I found it. And going back to what you do with your writing, it's just this thing that provides this sense of purpose and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I think they're the foundations of what we want to do, right?
Absolutely. And that is fulfillment right there in the perfect summary of a live example of like them reaching out to you and saying you've saved someone's life. It's like priceless. What could you put on that? There's no amount of money that could replace that feeling you have now and you had in that moment to know. And when it comes to reaching people, I have a philosophy that I operate from, and it's to reach one is to reach them all. And that philosophy came shortly after my sister passed away from an overdose. I couldn't help her. She'd read some of my books. I had a couple books out at that time, talking to her. Last time I had a conversation with her, we kind of got in a little bit of a banter, and it was like I was in the middle like of going into an appointment. It was like, I'll just call you later. And I didn't call her later. I got busy. I got a phone call the next morning. My mom like crying hysterically that my sister had passed. And in that journey of healing with that grief, and the grief of it all is like dealing with guilt and feeling like I couldn't help my sister. I wanted to help her so much, and I've helped other people. Why couldn't I help my sister? And it kind of came to me where I was like, you know what? You can't help everyone you want to, and you can't help sometimes the people you want to the most. But if you reach one person, then to that one person, you're reaching them all. And that doesn't just apply to you with a podcast or me with books or talks or someone else with other platforms. That applies to every single one of us, that we have the opportunity as individuals to reach people in so many more ways than we realize it, whether it just be a random person you see at the store that you just give a compliment to or hold the door from, because underneath the surface of what you see in that person, you don't know what they're dealing with or struggling with, and how one kind gesture could reach them and basically change their life. So it's that idea of it's not about the numbers or the volume. It's just about that one individual that I believe we all have the opportunity to reach at some point in our life. And that's, to me, really one of the things that fulfillment comes from, is just to reach others and do what we can to just be that light for someone else.
Yeah, man. You mentioned something earlier about there's a cultural shift in the world in regards to mental health and people talking about it. I agree, especially with men. Men really are talking about their feelings more and more, It's great, They're talking about their feelings, they're writing about their feelings. And I just think that's one of the most beautiful things to come out of this progression in technology. It's so good that men are using their voice to talk about their feelings, and also the ability for them to, and just people in general, to access help. So you might write something and it reaches that one person, and that one person that you reached now has the capabilities to reach out to you for more information or to discuss it, or they can reach out to a professional for assistance to tap in to the feelings that you elicit with your writing. I just think these are some positives to come out, in this modern world, So,
and I think a lot of the, with people being more open to talk about mental health, I think some of it has to do with seeing, let's just say, like, high profile people take their life. I think that for people that seem untouchable become really human when you read the news or hear about them taking their life. And then you think like, okay, that just dismantles of everything we think about the areas of where we feel like we're lacking in our life to have a reason to be depressed, where, you know, these people in our minds have everything, but it doesn't make them immune from the struggles with depression and mental health. So that, I think, it just puts almost like gives some people like a gut check and a reality check of like, yeah, like this isn't anything to joke with, you know, this is serious stuff. And it kind of is the gateway to have more conversations about it. And, you know, I think as a collective, like from a male perspective, it's nice for me to see men starting to become more vulnerable and more open with their feelings, and letting go of the idea that you have to be macho or whatever. You can't show your feelings because you're a man or whatever. I'm glad to see that happening. And I think, like we talked about the shame earlier, the more of us that do that, it is a part of dissolving any type of shame that people may feel about feeling down or less than, you know. And you talk about, like, you asked like about us raising our son. That's one thing that will always be important to me, that my son will know how I feel, and he will see me cry, he will see me upset, and he will know it's okay to express how he feels, you know, giving him that space and freedom to not have to be alone with the struggles and emotions that he'll deal with as a person going through the world. Like, to be like, nothing you need to hide here. Just let it be known of what it is that you're feeling. And I think that, you know, in our era growing up, it's just kind of like, you know, it wasn't easy for males to talk with each other about how we're feeling or whatever. And in many cases, still not. So I think we still have a lot of work to do, but I feel like a lot of, on the other hand, there's a lot of progress being made, which is encouraging and inspiring.
Yeah, I like what you said about your son there. I think seeing, like, you know, your array of emotions, you know, as a human living in a harsh world, because it is a harsh world, let's face it.
Yeah.
You know, and battling the human condition that we all suffer from. No one's immune. Like you mentioned, rich people, famous people, no one is immune to this. And I think you do your children no service by protecting them from, you know, the spectrum of emotions that we all experience. They have to, because if they don't see it from you, they're going to see it somewhere else. But at least when they do it with you, they're seeing it in a way of through the lens of love as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's the love they have for you and the love or the love you have for them, and it's done in the most positive way. So I'm glad you said that, man. So thanks.
Yeah, and I'm already working with him on, like, just processing emotions and, you know, really open with asking how he feels. But, like, you know, emotional intelligence and ways of, like, you know, are you frustrated right now? What are some things you can do if you're frustrated? How can you express that? Or just healthy ways to channel those emotions.
Yes.
But and finding resolve, you know, like being healthy models, like my wife and I both being models of what it looks like to not agree on something, but finding a peaceful and healthy resolve in front of him for him, you know. So that's like another thing that we're intentional about with him as well, like making sure that we give him examples of ways that we may disagree and how we can come to a resolve and understanding and mutual respect about it.
Like negotiation, problem solving, conflict resolution.
Yeah.
These are transferable skills in every aspect of life. You know, and,
yes.
You know, they got to learn them, I guess. And, you know, I've learned, my friend's a child psychologist, and, you know, children, they see parts of themselves in you and your wife and they identify with both aspects of it, you know. So that's why it's so crucial not to be derogatory or rude or intentionally unkind to the other partner in front of the child, because the child doesn't see it as, oh, dad's just being rude to mum, or vice versa. They see it as, dad's being rude to me. They take it personally.
Wow.
when you speak badly about the other partner. So it's crucial, and this is a big thing for separated families and divorced families, you know, not, for lack of a better term, like slandering or sledging the former
putting the other one under the bus.
Yeah, in front of the children, because the children aren't. They're taking it as a personal attack on themselves, and you hurt the children, and you definitely don't hurt the other partner, because they're not there to hear it, you know. So
yeah. True.
I don't know. These are good messages I want to put out there, if I'm honest.
And how are you doing with that? Because you mentioned earlier that you were going through the divorce and the pandemic to process through. How are you with that now?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it more openly now. You know, I wasn't, and it was very difficult. Still is in a lot of ways. It was also this aspect of society that I was oblivious to, and now in post event, I realise that so many people in our society are dealing with this situation of separation and divorce. So I was just kind of, even though I'm a child of divorce myself, I was really oblivious to how many people are going through it and navigating it on a day-to-day basis. And another thing that I'm realising, how much it's perpetuating suicide because of the severity of the grief and the loss that come with it. And I'm so grateful, and I'm becoming progressively grateful for the experience. It's put a lot of things in my life in perspective. So thanks for asking, Ricky. I appreciate you.
Yeah. And how are your kids doing okay with it? Because I know that's a whole nother level. It's not just about you and your ex-partner. It's the kids, and that's just another layer to it that is there to deal with and work through for everyone, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I lose sleep over that. I did lose sleep over that. But my kids seem like really happy kids. They are. And I think it's because, again, I've really worked hard on, not having direct conflict in front of them from the very start, which is, challenging. I've also just worked really hard on, what I was saying before, and being very mindful of the words I speak in regards to my former partner, about my former partner. But the biggest thing I've learned, I think it is better for children to not be in a situation where the parents are not in love. I think that is now, in hindsight, more harmful than the parents being separated. I've come to believe that. So,
because that teaches them to settle in life and shows them, like, if they're not happy, to stick it out and all that. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to find our own happiness and fulfillment. And I think that maybe it's one of those things that hurts initially for them, but in terms of long-term benefits, I agree. It's going to be more of an example for them, and because I think one of the best things we can do for our children is to teach them to honor and respect themselves and how they feel, and that's, you're not teaching them that if you're just staying in an unhappy situation. You just, because one or the other is not honoring and respecting themselves and how they feel and being honest with it. So I agree.
Yeah, man, good point. Like, again, it comes down to honesty. Yeah, self-honesty. It really does. Yeah, you want to teach them that, So, yeah, man, I don't know. I again, we're talking about vulnerability. Like I said, that's the most I've ever said about my situation on here. But I'm okay with it now. I'm okay with talking about it because I do know that there's people out there really suffering with this situation. It's
think
scary.
about someone right now, like at the start of where you were, at the beginning of it. It's just a very long talk about hiking Mount Everest. It's a hike up Mount Everest without any gear to get through that, So they're there to someone out there right now, that listens to this and are at the beginning of that journey. It's because we're talking about your journey with it. What would you tell someone at the beginning? What would you tell yourself at the beginning if you could go back in hindsight? Like when you started that journey of dealing with one of the hardest things you did in your life with divorce and having kids and a house and all of those things that you had to basically dismantle. And
ooh, Ricky, I'm not used to.
At the beginning, Shan.
I'm not used to being put on the spot like this, but I thank you for asking it because I was very lucky. I had really good advice and support around me, but not everyone is as lucky as I am to have that guidance, especially in the initial stages. And my friend and I have talked about this. So many men make their situation in the long term so much more difficult because of they're acting on emotions in the first few days, in the first few weeks, and it completely blows their time with their children later on. In Australia we have a thing called apprehended violence orders, AVOs, and because there is horrendous violence perpetuated on women in our society and other Western societies. Our legal system has become very protective of women, and so they should. However, someone can have an AVO put on them very easily. It can be as much as a nasty text message, but the fallout from that is that they won't be able to see their kids for long periods of time because of that, and they can't go within certain distances. So. My advice to someone who's going in the very initial phases of it is just remember, like what they say, the police say when they arrest someone is like what you have the right to remain silent, and anything you say or do can and will be used against you. And unfortunately, when that's used against you, that translates into reduced contact with your children. And that reduced contact with children must be the most painful thing that any human can go through. And that's what's perpetuating a suicide in these situations. So I think men, and unfortunately, it's generally men on that side of the argument. Not always, but a majority of the time from what I've come to learn. So I just... and us men are emotional beings. We also have a thing called testosterone, and it's a powerful drug, that testosterone. And once the emotions and the testosterone are running high, bad decisions are made. And especially, like you said, with the ability to contact people on phone and social media and writing things on social media or text messaging or, it can just completely blow their time with their kids. And that's would be the biggest advice. And my friend, sorry to go on a rant, but my friend who's a family law court barrister, he wants to create a thing where you triage a man in the initial phases, like an emergency line. Okay, what's happened? Okay, don't and do it for free, because for a lot of men, speaking to a lawyer is so expensive, they don't have these financial resources. So it's like a hotline of okay, can't give you legal advice, but we can say this: don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do this, and go here, and just wait for the dust to settle. Yeah. I know. Because
you're dealing with that emotional reaction of your whole reality changing, and the identity you had with it, the story you created, all these different things. It's just traumatizing. You know, completely just throws you in a tornado. You know. So yeah, I like that, having some sort of triage of like just like a window period of to pad the blow, kind of, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, and on both sides, you know, of like male and female, it's just that harsh reality of something not working out that you thought would, and the idea of it. And I think that one thing I would add to that is for people just to be kind to themselves, you know, just to be compassionate, kind, and give yourself grace. And like you had mentioned, the way you're going to grow from it and are growing from it is just look for the lessons that it has to teach you. And another thing you mentioned, and we kind of talked about before, is this things go in seasons, and it's season like that is just a really, really harsh one, but the sun will come out again, and the sky will be blue and birds will be chirping. But
do you have friends that have gone through it? Do you know anyone?
Yeah, and I have, you know, so yeah. It's you know, didn't have kids, and just, you know, when you get older, you've gone through, whether it be a divorce or not, you've gone through your share of like harsh breakups and like broken hearts, and, you know, like just dealing with that. And I was talking to a friend that's kind of at the beginning stages now, like just a really heavy situation. But, you know, I was telling him, I was like, dude, you just gotta like, yeah, I talk about that hike up Mount Everest. So you just really have to just get your mind in that place of you're going on a hike right now. You're going on a long journey, and just put your bag on and just put one step in front of the other and keep walking. And just in that bag, just let it be any tools that you can lean into to just kind of help you push through and keep going. So it's definitely like, because you can't, there's a song, I think it's Trevor Hall, where you can't rush your healing. And I think that people try to rush their healing by ignoring their feelings, essentially, and like doing whatever, like covering it up with whatever unhealthy choice they choose to, or whatever, drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be. And no matter what you do to escape it, it's always going to be there waiting for you to deal with. So it's like, understanding you can't rush it and taking it day by day and work through every aspect of it the best way you can.
Yeah, man. And I guess that one last message to your friend would be, every time you don't react negatively, that's a small victory. And that's a series of, and that's it's a series of small victories. Yeah, just, and that's the biggest, hardest thing, is not to react. Yeah. No, just be proactive, not reactive.
If someone's at the really, really beginning of it, just encourage them to get some food. Just eat. Because, you know, you don't feel like eating. You don't feel like doing anything. Oh, man, sleep all day. Don't want to eat. No, whatever. So it's like, yeah, everything's a victory. And, you know, that all just ties back to mental health and depression, like we were talking about earlier. You know, I always kind of like say that. And there's actually a part of the new book where I talk about that, where it's like, when you feel that wave of depression hit you, don't think of shaking it, or don't think of what you have to do. Just think of doing one thing. And sometimes that's the most simple thing, of even if it's just getting up out of bed to brush your teeth, and you go from there to get a glass of water, go from there to just stacking one little decision at a time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, break it up into small parts, because if you look at the whole thing, it looks too big. But I remember I was hiking to Mount Everest, actually, now we talk about that, you know, it was actually hard. Like, I didn't climb Mount Everest, but even the hike from the airport, this place called Lukla, to Mount Everest base camp is gnarly. It took us 9 days, you know. It's the only way in there. Yeah.
Just to get to the base camp?
Just to get to the base camp, dude. And, you're hiking at over 3,000 metres. So once you get over 3,000 metres, your risk of cerebral edema and altitude sickness, it's all there. I mean, I had altitude sickness most of the time, And you have this propensity to look down when you're walking up hills because you walk up a lot of hills, and you're looking down, placing your feet, and you're looking down, and it's really hard. And this Sherpa said to me, he goes, when you hike, he's like, keep your chin up and look at the mountain as you hike, look at the peak as you walk. Now, obviously, you've got to have where your feet are going in your peripherals.
Yeah.
But when you walk with your head up and you look at that peak and you can see where you're going, the pain's much less, and the journey's much easier to the top.
I love that. I love that.
And I was just like, actually, it wasn't a Sherpa, it was a porter, because Sherpas are different. Sherpas are the gurus, man. They guide you through the mountains there. And the porters are generally not from the Sherpa tribe, but they're these pack horses that will carry these, 100 kilos on their back. I don't know what that is in pounds. I know, but 100 kilos is heavy on these terrible in a straw basket, and they'll hike, in terrible shoes, and carry all your stuff
like it's nothing.
And this one dude, he was like 60 years old, as strong as an ox.
Wow.
And he said that to me because I kept looking at him, dude, how are you doing that? You're like, and I didn't complain after that, and I walked with my chin up, and I walked looking at where I wanted to go. So it's good.
I'm going to do that next time I'm on a hike.
Try it. And you watch how much easier it is. Physically, all of a sudden, the pain seems to go away, or it's not as painful.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I like that.
Cool, man. Hey, listen, Ricky. Tell everyone where we can find your books. How can people find your books?
Anywhere on Amazon, or there's different booksellers internationally, but Amazon's probably the most consistent with all of them on there. Just put in my name, Ricky Roberts III. The latest one, Thank You Skateboarding. There's like I said, there's 8 of them.
Soon to be 9.
Yeah, soon to be 9. I'm excited.
Awesome.
I'm excited. And that'll be within the next couple months, I would say.
Yeah, man.
Maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see.
You got this, bro.
The thing I was talking about earlier, like knowing when to let go, there's also the part of, not feeling a sense of urgency to rush anything either, So the only pressure that gets put on is the pressure I put on myself. So it's just managing that and kind of enjoying the process along the way, because I could get my head down and kind of miss out on some of the joy of what it means to be bringing the new book together.
Yes, man. Yes. That's good. Well, man, how you feeling? You tired? You wanna wrap it up?
I'm feeling good. It's great to talk to you. I know it's been a while, so yeah, whatever. We need to wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. But yeah, it's always good to talk to you, and I'm grateful that therapist reached out to you, that gave you that confirmation of, I know it's hard to do this and do the podcast and kind of the back end work and the diligence of it all. But it's just that confirmation that it's all worth it, and not to mention when you were saying that, sharing that story, I thought about in the beginning where you always say it's for your kids. And I'm just like, man, that's really powerful, because one day your kids will be listening to them and talking to you about them, having conversations about it or whatever. They're just going to have a whole library of different people to get something from,
Yeah.
So.
You know where that stemmed from, dude? I'm feeling a bit emotional today, actually. That stems from my cousin, who I was deeply close to. She was amazing. She committed suicide. Oh no, actually, that's not the right terminology. I've learnt. She took her own life, and after she passed away, I found a voice message. In my phone, you know, and I listened to. Yeah, I listened to that voice message on repeat. You know, so I was listening to her from the grave, you know, and I guess that's where it comes from for my kids. You know, I want to give them enough of my voice that one day, you never know when your time is gonna end, and you know, my kids will be able to listen to me from the grave one day. That's sort of where it was born from, you know. And not only that too, I speak to epic humans, like amazing humans, and hopefully they just learn a lot of life lessons, you know, and we learn them together, you know. So
Yeah.
and I see that with your books, man. Like your son, you know, he's going to read your books one day and really get inside your mind when he's navigating adulthood, you know. He's going to have the same.
Yeah.
He's going to have the same questions about his existence as you did, and do and have, and he's going to learn them with you. You know, I think it's really cool, man. So,
Yeah.
you know.
And how powerful it is that you had that voicemail with your cousin that had to be sometimes really hard to listen to, sometimes refreshing and encouraging to listen to, and just like imagining your kids being able to listen to it. And I'm like, you know, you're getting emotional. I'm emotional thinking about like just that, like my son listening to my voice one day, you know, if that's how it plays out, or just like honestly, like thinking about a time, you know, you talk about your cousin taking her own life, just thinking about a time where I was really close, and when during the midst of writing the book, and it just like how my son's face and his his smile and his laughter like came to me at the perfect time for me to walk away from what I was doing. Yeah, and still be here. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, you said something earlier that hit me really hard. You said your sister overdosed, and you said your last conversation with her was kind of dismissive. You were in a rush, you were busy, and then you never called her back. You know, I didn't say it at the time when you said that, but I had the same thing with my cousin. She rang me. She wanted to talk about this tree that the local government was cutting down as part of a development. And she's like, oh, I've got to save this tree. And she was going on this rant. And I was like trying to give her advice about how to do it legally and what she needs to do. And she wasn't really listening to me. And I remember I just was like, I'm over this conversation. And I cut the conversation short, and I hung up the phone going, oh, man, she's a pain in the ass. That's what I thought, you know. And then that was my last actual conversation with her. And it's just like, I mean, this life's intense, and we just don't have any control over anything, you know.
No.
And we just have every day to be our best. That's it.
And you never know when the last time it is you're going to talk to someone, because that was very similar with my sister. Like she was talking about me, not like something with her daughter and birthday gifts or something, and it was just like, you know, what seemed like a nuisance to me then, if I would have known it was the last time I talked to her, I would have listened to whatever she wanted to tell me. You know, I would have talked to her all day, and into the night, whatever she wanted to talk about, whatever was frustrating or seemed annoying to me at the time, really wasn't. And I think that's a lesson for all of us, is sometimes we get so focused on our own world and our own ideas and where we need to head to next, that it's not always about what someone's telling you or always about what someone's talking about. It's just, sometimes it's just a matter of giving them space. And it's a good reminder, you know, you bringing that up, and my similar experience with my sister is just a reminder to all of us to like keep ourselves in check, you know. And even though that's happened to me, who knows how many times I've done that since then, to people I care about, to friends, to family, to my wife. Like, okay, cool, yeah, I gotta go, like whatever, you know. And it's just a good reminder for us to just pause sometimes, pause and take in the opportunity we have to see or to talk to anyone anytime we have to, because shortly after that, I think I wrote a blog about it or something. I don't have it up anymore, but it was just like, you know, I'll call you later, I think it was titled, but it's the idea was like, I just never know when it's the last time you're going to talk to someone. And in that same time period, I saw different friends where like I hadn't seen in a while, saw them at the store. 2 days later, someone gets killed in a car wreck. Like, saw this other dude randomly at like a Target or something, and then he got killed. Like, so it's just, like you said, life's a trip. It's a very tricky thing to navigate through. So we just all got to be kind to each other the best we can, and keep doing our best to love one another and be kind to ourselves, you know.
Yeah, man. I think that's a really good message to end on, Ricky. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ricky Roberts the third, everybody.